What would you do if the woman everyone just humiliated in a $50 million mansion turned out to be the very owner they were trying to impress? Tonight, a modestly dressed woman walks into a room full of wealthy elites, only to be torn apart by their cruel words and ruthless laughter, until the moment they realize the truth. Stay tuned, because when the tables turn, the real queen will rise, and some people will lose everything. Mia's nails dig into her palms, the sting grounding her, the pain a reminder to stay calm, to stay in control. The crowd around her swirls like a pack of sharks, circling closer, eyes glittering, smiles sharp and gleaming. Vanessa's laughter rings through the room, high and cruel, echoing off the vaulted ceilings like a taunting ghost. "You know," Vanessa says, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, her lips curving into a venomous smirk as she raises her champagne flute. "I just love when people show up uninvited. It's so charitable." The crowd chuckles, glasses clinking, eyes darting to Mia, sizing her up, dissecting her inch by inch. Mia swallows, her throat tight, her heart pounding, the walls closing in, the air growing thicker, hotter, suffocating. "You're so right." A woman in a crimson gown coos, her eyes sweeping over Mia's plain dress, her smile wicked. I mean, honestly, did she steal that from the maid's closet? Another burst of laughter, louder this time, crueler, the sound crashing over Mia like a tidal wave, threatening to drag her under. Mia's fists clenched tighter, her breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps, but she refuses to move, refuses to give them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. Vanessa steps closer, her diamond earrings glinting like tiny knives, her perfume a heavy, choking cloud. "Oh, come on," she purrs, her red lips curving into a wicked grin. Maybe she's just here to apply for a job. "I hear they're hiring kitchen staff." The crowd howls, champagne sloshing over the rims of their glasses, the laughter echoing, reverberating through the grand hall, bouncing off the walls, slamming into Mia's chest like a battering ram. Her vision blurs, her pulse a deafening roar in her ears, her skin prickling beneath their stares, each one a burning brand, each one another strike, another blow. Maybe she's just lost? A man sneers, his gaze raking over Mia like she's a bug under his shoe. "I mean, come on. Look at her. Does she even know where she is? Do you know where you are?" Vanessa sneers, her eyes locked onto Mia's, dark and gleaming, a predator savoring its prey. This isn't the soup kitchen. "Honey." The crowd erupts again, the laughter rising, crashing over Mia, suffocating, drowning her, the noise a relentless, deafening roar that drowns out her heartbeat, her breath, her very existence. Vanessa steps closer, her smile widening, her eyes narrowing, her voice dropping to a low, lethal whisper that slices through the air like a razor blade. "I'd offer you a drink," she says, lifting her glass, the champagne bubbling, glinting in the light like liquid gold. "But I don't think you can afford it." And then she tips the glass forward, the champagne spilling over the rim, cascading down Mia's dress in a shimmering waterfall, soaking the fabric, sticking to her skin, cold and wet and humiliating. Gasps ripple through the crowd, cameras flash, phones rise, recording every second, every drop, every second of Mia's downfall. Vanessa steps back, her smile triumphant, her eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction as she watches Mia stand there, dripping, trembling, broken. "Oops," Vanessa says, her voice sickly sweet, her grin widening as she raises her empty glass, her eyes sparkling with malicious delight. "Maybe next time, you'll dress the part." The crowd roars, glasses raised, laughter exploding through the room, the sound a relentless, suffocating wave that crashes over Mia, dragging her under, ripping her apart. And as Vanessa saunters away, tossing her hair, her heels clicking against the marble like a victory march, Mia stands there, chest heaving, jaw clenched, fists shaking, her heart slamming against her ribs like a war drum. But she doesn't move, doesn't break, don't look away, not yet, because if they think this is the end of her, they have no idea what's coming. The room is a whirl of sneers and whispers, faces blurred behind the glare of flashing cameras, phones raised high as they capture every dripping inch of Mia's soaked dress, every drop of champagne glistening like a million shards of shattered dignity. Vanessa stands at the center of it all, her red lips curved into a satisfied smirk, her eyes dark and glittering as she raises her glass once more, the empty flute clinking against her manicured nails like a victory bell. "Attention, everyone," she calls out, her voice cutting through the cacophony, slicing through the air like a knife. "I just want to thank Mia here for reminding us all of what real charity looks like." The crowd erupts in laughter, their faces twisted into vicious grins, their eyes trained on Mia as if she's some kind of sideshow attraction. Mia stands frozen, her fists clenched at her sides, her nails digging into her palms so hard she can feel the sting of blood beneath her skin. But she doesn't flinch, doesn't move, doesn't break. "Oh, come on," Vanessa purrs, her heels clicking as she steps forward, her perfume a choking cloud of jasmine and poison. "Don't just stand there looking so tragic." She reaches out, her fingers curling around a loose strand of Mia's hair, twisting it around her finger, her lips curving into a wicked grin. "I mean, we've all been through hard times, right? Maybe Mia here just needs a little help." Vanessa releases Mia's hair with a flick of her wrist, her laughter ringing through the room as she steps back, her eyes gleaming. "How about we start a collection?" She sneers, holding out her empty glass, shaking it like a beggar's cup. "You know, to get Mia a new dress that doesn't look like it came out of a clearance bin." The crowd roars, glasses raised, champagne sloshing, eyes flashing as coins clatter into Vanessa's glass. Each one another nail driven into Mia's coffin. "Here, sweetie." A woman in a sparkling silver gown sneers, tossing a handful of coins onto the floor, the metal discs bouncing, spinning, rolling across the marble, each one a taunting echo. "Go buy yourself a life." Laughter crashes over Mia, a relentless, suffocating wave, the sound pressing down on her, choking her, drowning her. Cameras flash, capturing every second, every sneer, every tear she refuses to let fall. Vanessa steps closer, her grin widening, her eyes dancing with malicious glee as she bends down, scooping up a single coin from the floor, holding it up to Mia's face, the metal catching the light, gleaming like a bullet. "Here," Vanessa whispers, her breath hot against Mia's cheek, her voice a venomous hiss. "Consider it a down payment for the life you'll never have." And then she drops the coin, letting it fall, letting it bounce against Mia's foot, the sound echoing through the room, through Mia's bones, through her very soul. The crowd laughs harder, glasses clinking, phones snapping, the sound a relentless, crushing roar that threatens to tear Mia apart from the inside out. Vanessa steps back, tossing her hair, lifting her glass, her red lips curving into a cruel, victorious smile. "To Mia," she says, her voice loud, clear, echoing through the room as she raises her glass high, the girl who thought she could play with the rich. The crowd raises their glasses, their eyes fixed on Mia, their laughter a brutal, unrelenting crescendo as Vanessa drains her glass, her eyes locked onto Mia's, her smile widening, her victory complete. Mia stands there, her chest heaving, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts, her fists clenched so tight her knuckles are white, her eyes blazing with a fire that refuses to be extinguished. And as Vanessa turns away, as the crowd disperses, as the laughter echoes through the grand hall like a haunting, taunting refrain, Mia lifts her chin, her jaw clenched, her eyes dark and fierce, her heart slamming against her ribs like a war drum, because they think they've seen the end of her, but they haven't even seen her begin. The laughter still echoes in Mia's ears as she stands there, champagne dripping down her dress, her chest heaving, her nails digging into her palms so hard she's sure they'll leave scars. Vanessa tosses her hair, her red lips curved into a triumphant smirk as she clinks glasses with her entourage, their eyes glinting with vicious satisfaction. "Did you see her face?" Vanessa laughs, her voice a high, sharp cackle that slices through the air. Priceless. Absolutely priceless. Mia's jaw clenches, her eyes burning, her pulse pounding in her ears like a drum. The room spins around her, faces blurring, whispers merging into a cacophony of mockery, every cruel word another knife twisting in her chest. But then a voice booms through the room, deep and commanding, slicing through the noise like a thunderclap. What the hell is going on here? The crowd stills, heads whipping around, eyes widening as Thomas strides forward, his jaw clenched, his eyes blazing, his perfectly tailored suit gleaming under the chandelier lights. Vanessa's smug smile falters, her spine stiffening as she turns to face him, her fingers tightening around her glass. "Oh, Thomas," she purrs, forcing a laugh, her eyes darting to her friends, seeking their approval. "We're just having a little fun." Thomas's gaze sweeps the room, dark and searing, before landing on Mia, who stands motionless, her chin lifted, her eyes hard, unyielding. "This is your idea of fun." Thomas growls, his voice cold as ice, his jaw working, humiliating the woman who owns this mansion. Gasps ripple through the crowd, champagne glasses freezing midair, eyes widening, jaws dropping as Thomas's words sink in like knives. Vanessa's face drains of color, her lips parting, her eyes going wide as she stares at Mia, the woman she just humiliated in front of everyone. "No." She breathes, her voice cracking, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's not... She can't be." "Oh, but she is." Thomas snaps, his eyes flashing as he steps forward, his presence a storm, a force of nature, his fists clenched at his sides. "Mia Sinclair, the woman who just purchased this estate and every property on this block. The woman who was standing here watching as you poured champagne down her dress and called her a nobody." Vanessa's knees wobble, her champagne glass slipping from her hand, shattering against the marble floor with a piercing crash that echoes through the stunned silence. The crowd erupts in whispers, eyes darting to Mia, whose spine straightens, whose eyes darken, whose jaw sets like stone as she steps forward, the crowd parting for her like the sea splitting open. "You know what's funny?" Vanessa Mia says, her voice low, calm, dripping with venom as she stalks forward, her heels clicking against the marble like gunshots. "You were right. I did start out as a nobody. I did wear cheap dresses and serve drinks to people like you, people who looked down on me, who laughed at me, who thought they were better than me just because they could afford to." Vanessa's breath hitches, her chest heaving, her hands shaking as she stumbles back, her eyes wide, wild, terrified. "But the thing about nobodies," Mia continues, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper, her gaze locking onto Vanessa's like a predator eyeing its prey, "is that we never forget the people who tried to crush us on our way up." The whispers grow louder, the crowd pressing closer, eyes flashing, phones raised, cameras recording every word, every second, every devastating blow. "I bought this mansion," Mia says, her eyes still locked onto Vanessa's, her jaw tight, her fists clenched, "because I wanted to see what it felt like to stand where you stood, surrounded by money, by power, by people who only care about what you wear and how much you're worth." Vanessa shakes her head, tears brimming, her lips quivering as Mia steps closer, her eyes burning with a fire that threatens to consume everything in its path. "And now," Mia breathes, her voice a deadly, lethal purr. "I see it. I see everything. And the view from the top. It's lonely as hell." Vanessa's knees buckle, a strangled sob escaping her throat as she collapses to the floor, her diamond earrings glittering like broken promises against the marble, her shoulders shaking, her breaths coming in short, shallow gasps. Mia steps back, her chest heaving, her heart pounding, the room spinning around her as the crowd stares, as Vanessa crumbles, as the world finally sees the truth. The girl they laughed at, the girl they mocked, the girl they tried to destroy is the woman who now owns everything they thought they could keep from her. And tonight, the queen has claimed her throne. Vanessa remains crumpled on the marble floor, her breaths ragged, her eyes wild, mascara streaking down her cheeks like black tears. The room is suffocatingly silent, the weight of Mia's revelation pressing down like a heavy, unrelenting fist. Mia stands tall, her chest rising and falling, her eyes locked onto Vanessa, her fists clenched at her sides, the power radiating off her in waves. "But that's not all. Vanessa," Mia says, her voice cold, lethal, each word a bullet aimed straight at Vanessa's heart. "You see, when I bought this estate, I didn't just buy the mansion." Vanessa's eyes widen, her lips parting, her pulse hammering beneath her skin as Mia takes a slow, deliberate step forward, her heels clicking against the floor like the ticking of a countdown clock. "I bought the entire block," Mia continues, her eyes gleaming, her jaw set. "Every single property on this street, including the one your father's company has been trying to acquire for months." Gasps ripple through the crowd, champagne glasses quivering in trembling hands, eyes darting to Vanessa, whose face has gone ghostly white, her chest rising and falling in shallow, panicked breaths. "No!" Vanessa chokes out, her voice breaking, her hands clutching the floor as though it might swallow her whole. "No, you didn't. You can't." "Oh, I did," Mia says, her voice smooth, unrelenting, a dark velvety blade that slices through the air. And you know what that means. Vanessa's breath hitches, her fingers digging into the marble, her shoulders shaking as she stares up at Mia, her eyes wide, glassy, desperate. "It means," Mia says, leaning down, her face inches from Vanessa's, her voice a venomous whisper, "that the next time your father wants to negotiate a deal, he'll have to come to me. He'll have to beg me. And after tonight, after the way you treated me, the way you humiliated me, the way you tried to strip me of every ounce of dignity I had," left Mia's eyes narrow, her smile a slow, dangerous curve, her breath hot against Vanessa's tear-streaked face. "I think we both know how that negotiation is going to go." Vanessa's lips tremble, a strangled sob escaping her throat as she shakes her head, her eyes glistening, her heart slamming against her ribs like a battering ram. "Please," she whispers, her voice cracking, her fingers reaching out, trembling, desperate. "Please, Mia, you can't do this. My father, he needs that deal. If you take it away, he'll what?" Mia snaps, her voice rising, her eyes flashing, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth ache. "He'll lose everything. He'll be humiliated. He'll be brought to his knees." Vanessa sobs, her head bowing, her shoulders shaking, the reality of her own destruction crashing over her like a tidal wave, a tsunami of her own making. "Now you know how it feels," Mia says, her voice dropping to a low, lethal whisper, each word slow, deliberate, dripping with venom. "Now you know what it's like to be nothing." Vanessa gasps, her chest heaving, her eyes wide, wild, the room spinning around her as the whispers rise, the guests closing in, eyes sharp, mouths twisted into cruel, satisfied grins. "Maybe now," Mia says, her voice a soft, deadly purr. "You'll remember that the people you step on while you're climbing up are the same people waiting to watch you fall." And with that, Mia straightens, her head high, her eyes blazing, her heels clicking against the floor as she walks away. The crowd parting for her like the sea splitting open, the air thick with whispers, with fear, with awe. Vanessa collapses against the floor, her breaths coming in short, shuddering sobs, her world crashing down around her, the taste of champagne and humiliation bitter on her tongue. And as Mia disappears through the grand double doors, her dress trailing behind her like a queen's cape, the whispers rise, echoing through the grand hall like a haunting, relentless refrain. She owns everything. She owns all of us. And now, Vanessa's about to lose it all. Vanessa crumples to the floor, her manicured nails scraping against the cold marble, her breaths coming in short, ragged bursts as the whispers around her rise like a storm. The guests step back, their eyes wide, their faces a mix of shock and cruel satisfaction as they watch the queen of the night brought to her knees. "Did you hear that a woman in a silver gown whispers, her red lips curving into a wicked smile? She just lost everything. And all because she couldn't keep her mouth shut?" Another man sneers, his champagne glass raised as he watches Vanessa shake, her shoulders hunched, her hair a disheveled mess. Vanessa's chest heaves, her eyes darting wildly around the room, searching for a friendly face, a lifeline, anything to keep her from drowning in the humiliation that's engulfing her like a tidal wave. But the crowd continues to close in, their whispers growing louder, sharper, each word a knife slicing through her skin. Didn't her father's company just take out a massive loan? A man murmurs, his brows raised, his voice dripping with false concern. From Mia's company? Oh, yes. A woman laughs, her diamond necklace catching the light as she tosses her head back. And after tonight, that loan's as good as gone. Vanessa's nails dig into her palms, her breath's coming in harsh, shallow gasps, her heart slamming against her ribs as the walls close in, the room spinning, her vision blurring. Please, she chokes out, her voice a broken, desperate whisper, her eyes brimming with tears as she reaches for the nearest person. A man in a crisp tuxedo who once hung on her every word, who once begged for her attention. But now, he steps back, his lip curled in disdain, his eyes cold as ice. Sorry, he says, his voice dripping with mock sympathy as he looks down at her, as though she's something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. I don't talk to nobodies. The crowd erupts in laughter, their voices a brutal, relentless wave crashing over Vanessa, drowning her, suffocating her. And then, through the chaos, a voice booms across the room, deep and commanding, slicing through the noise like a blade. Enough. The room falls silent, all eyes turning as Thomas strides forward, his jaw clenched, his eyes blazing, his fists clenched at his sides. This is Mia's house, he says, his voice carrying, echoing, reverberating through the grand hall. And as of tonight, Mia has full control of every single asset under her name, including every property your father's company is leasing. Vanessa's breath catches, her eyes going wide, her lips parting as she stares up at Thomas, her pulse a wild, frantic drumbeat in her ears. No, she whispers, her voice breaking, her hands shaking as she pushes herself to her knees, her mascara-streaked face a mask of desperation. Please, Thomas, you can't. Oh, but we can, Thomas says, his voice cold, merciless, his eyes burning with the fury of a man who's watched the woman he cares about be torn apart by the very people who now grovel at her feet. And after what you did tonight, after the way you treated Mia, he steps closer, leaning down, his eyes dark, his jaw tight, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Consider every contract with your father's company terminated, effective immediately. Vanessa's knees buckle, a strangled sob escaping her throat as she collapses against the marble, her chest heaving, her nails scraping against the floor as the room spins, as the walls close in, as her entire world crashes down around her like a house of cards. Please, she sobs, her voice a broken, desperate wail, her shoulders shaking as she stares up at Thomas, her eyes wild, pleading, terrified. Please, you can't do this. My father, he'll lose everything. I'll lose everything. Thomas straightens, his eyes hard, his face a mask of stone as he steps back, his gaze sweeping over her with cold, brutal detachment. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy the woman who owns everything you're about to lose. And as the crowd watches, as the whispers rise, as Vanessa's sobs echo through the grand hall like a haunting, hollow refrain, Thomas turns on his heel, his jaw clenched, his eyes blazing as he walks away, his heart pounding, his chest heaving, his pulse thundering like a war drum. Because tonight, the queen has fallen, and the girl they tried to destroy has risen from the ashes to take her throne. The crowd watches as Vanessa crumples against the marble floor, her sobs echoing through the grand hall, a haunting, hollow sound that reverberates through the cold, empty mansion. The guests murmur, their eyes darting to Mia, their expressions a mix of awe, fear, and guilt. But Mia doesn't look at Vanessa, doesn't spare her a single glance. Instead, her gaze sweeps across the room, searching, until her eyes land on a figure standing by the doorway. Nora, the housekeeper, her hands clasped tightly together, her eyes wide, her face pale, she watches the scene unfold. Mia's jaw tightens, her chest heaving as she strides forward, her heels clicking against the marble, each step deliberate, purposeful, her eyes fixed on Nora, the one person who had offered her a moment of kindness amidst the storm. "Nora," Mia says, her voice soft but strong, each word a lifeline reaching out to the woman who had once reached out to her. Nora's breath catches, her hands trembling, her eyes glistening as she meets Mia's gaze, her lips parting in a soft, shaky gasp. "Miss Carter," she whispers, her voice thick with emotion, her eyes wide, brimming with tears. "I didn't know. I had no idea who you really were. You didn't have to," Mia says, her voice firm, her eyes fierce as she steps closer, her hands reaching out, taking Nora's hands in hers, holding them tight, grounding her, anchoring her. "You were the only one who treated me with respect, who spoke to me like a human being, who offered me kindness when everyone else was too busy laughing." Nora shakes her head, her tears spilling over, her shoulders trembling as she squeezes Mia's hands, her breath coming in sharp, ragged bursts. "You were standing there, drenched in champagne, and they just kept laughing." She chokes out, her voice breaking, her chest heaving, and all I could think was, that could have been me. But it wasn't, Mia says, her eyes burning, her jaw clenched, her grip tightening around Nora's hands. "Because you're stronger than they are, kinder than they are, and that's why I want to offer you a new position." Nora's breath hitches, her eyes widening, her lips trembling as she stares at Mia, her heart slamming against her ribs, her pulse a wild, frantic beat. "A new position." Mia nods, her lips curving into a soft, gentle smile, her eyes shining with warmth, with gratitude, with fierce, unrelenting determination. "As the new head of estate services," Mia says, her voice ringing through the room, echoing across the marble floors, carrying through the stunned, silent crowd, with a raise and a new residence, here, on the estate. Gasps ripple through the crowd, eyes widening, jaws dropping, phones raised to capture the moment as Nora's knees buckle, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears, her breath coming in short, shallow bursts. "Oh my God," Nora sobs, her voice breaking, her chest heaving as she shakes her head, her shoulders trembling. "Mia? Miss Carter? I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Mia says, her smile widening, her eyes sparkling, her heart pounding as she pulls Nora into a tight, fierce hug, her arms wrapping around the woman who had once wrapped her in warmth, in kindness, in compassion. "Say yes, because you deserve this." Nora clings to her, her sobs muffled against Mia's shoulder, her body shaking, her tears soaking into Mia's dress. The champagne stain now a badge of honor, a testament to the girl who rose from nothing to become everything they said she couldn't be. And as the crowd watches, as the whispers rise, as the cameras flash, Mia holds Nora tight, her heart swelling, her chest aching, her soul soaring as she finally takes back the power they tried to strip from her, and uses it to lift someone else up. Because that's what real queens do. They don't just take the throne. They built one big enough for everyone who helped them rise. The room falls silent, the air thick, heavy, suffocating as Mia steps forward, her heels echoing like thunder against the marble floor. The crowd parts for her, eyes wide, faces pale, whispers rising like a haunting refrain as she moves toward the center of the grand hall, her shoulders squared, her chin lifted, her chest heaving with every breath. She stops beneath the glittering chandelier, its crystal strands shimmering like fallen stars, its light casting her in a haloed glow. The guests stand frozen, their champagne glasses clutched in trembling hands, their faces a sea of guilt, shame, and fear. Vanessa remains crumpled on the floor, her mascara-streaked face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking as she sobs. The queen brought to her knees, the empire she built on cruelty crumbling to dust. Mia takes a deep breath, her jaw clenched, her fists trembling at her sides, her pulse a relentless drumbeat pounding in her ears as she raises her eyes to the crowd, her gaze sweeping over them, each face, each sneer, each cruel smirk now replaced by wide, frightened eyes. "Tonight," Mia begins, her voice low, strong, carrying through the room like a storm rolling in. Each word a clap of thunder, each syllable a bolt of lightning. "You all looked at me and thought you knew me. You looked at my dress and decided I was nothing. You looked at my shoes and decided I was worthless. You looked at my face and decided I didn't belong here." The crowd shifts uneasily, eyes dropping, heads bowing, some of them unable to meet her gaze, others swallowing hard, their throats bobbing, their cheeks burning with shame. "But what you didn't see," Mia continues, her voice rising, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing like a firestorm, "was the girl who once stood in this very mansion, scrubbing these very floors, wearing a maid's uniform while you all walked by without a second glance." Gasps ripple through the room, hands flying to mouths, eyes going wide, jaws dropping as Mia's words sink in, as the reality of who she is and where she came from crashes over them like a tidal wave. "Yes," Mia says, her voice hard, unyielding, her fists clenching so tight her knuckles go white. "I was the girl you didn't see, the girl you dismissed, the girl you called a nobody." Her eyes lock onto Vanessa, who lifts her tear-streaked face, her lips trembling, her eyes hollow, dark, haunted. "And tonight," Mia says, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous purr, each word sharp, precise, slicing through the air like a blade. "You all reminded me of exactly what that felt like. You reminded me of every time someone sneered at me, every time someone laughed at me, every time someone told me I'd never be more than the girl scrubbing the floors." Mia's breath shudders, her heart slamming against her ribs, the memories flashing through her mind like a reel of film. The leering faces, the mocking laughter, the nights she cried herself to sleep, the days she scraped together, changed to eat, the years she spent clawing her way up from the bottom. "But what you didn't know," Mia says, her voice rising, fierce, powerful, her eyes blazing as she steps forward, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. "Was that every time you tried to tear me down, you only made me stronger. Every time you called me a nobody, you only made me hungrier. Every time you told me I didn't belong, you only made me fight harder." The crowd is silent, their breaths held, their eyes wide, glistening, riveted to Mia, the girl they tried to destroy, the girl who now stands before them, unbroken, untouchable, unstoppable. "And now," Mia says, her voice a low, venomous hiss, her gaze sweeping over them, her chin lifted, her shoulders squared, "I am the woman who owns the mansion you're standing in. I am the woman who now holds the fate of every single one of you in her hands." Her eyes lock onto Vanessa, whose lips part, her breath catching, her shoulders shaking as Mia steps closer, her voice dropping to a soft, dangerous whisper. "And the thing about people like me," Mia says, her eyes boring into Vanessa's, her smile slow, deadly, "is that we never forget the people who tried to break us." Vanessa's breath shudders, a sob escaping her throat as Mia pulls back, her gaze sweeping over the crowd one last time, her voice rising, echoing, a battle cry, a war drum, a victory march. "So, the next time you look at someone," Mia says, her eyes blazing, her fists clenched, her jaw set, "don't judge them by what they're wearing or what they have or where they came from. Because the girl you called a nobody might just be the queen who holds the keys to your entire kingdom." And with that, Mia turns, her heels clicking against the marble, her head held high, her back straight, her heart pounding as the crowd watches her walk away, their whispers rising like a haunting, relentless refrain. And tonight, they don't see the girl in the cheap dress. They see the queen who has just taken back her crown. Mia strides through the grand hall, the echoes of her words lingering in the air like the aftermath of a storm, the crowd parting for her as if she's a queen making her royal procession. Eyes follow her every step, wide, stunned, guilty, ashamed. The very people who once laughed at her now avert their gazes, heads bowed, whispers hushed, the sting of her truth still burning like a brand against their skin. Vanessa remains on the floor, mascara-streaked tears glistening down her cheeks, her once perfect hair a tangled mess, her diamond earrings hanging askew. The queen has fallen, and now she's nothing but a shattered shell. The crowd she once commanded now turning their backs, their whispers biting, venomous, cruel. Did you see her face when Mia dropped that bomb? A man in a tailored suit sneers, his champagne glass raised, his eyes glittering with vicious satisfaction. All that money and not a shred of class. And now, she's lost everything. A woman in a silk gown murmurs, her red lips curving into a smirk as she watches Vanessa curl into herself, her shoulders shaking, her breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. Mia's jaw tightens, her chest heaving, her pulse thundering in her ears as she moves toward the grand staircase, her heels striking the marble like a relentless drumbeat, her heart pounding with every step. The guests fall silent as she ascends the steps, their eyes tracking her like a hawk, the whispers rising again, swirling around her like a dark, suffocating fog. She's the real owner. She owns everything. She owns us. Mia's grip tightens around the railing, her knuckles white, her jaw clenched so tight it aches. The power coursing through her veins is intoxicating, a rush that makes her dizzy, that makes her want to scream, to shout, to rage against every single person who ever looked down on her, who ever laughed at her, who ever tried to convince her she was nothing. But she doesn't, because that's not who she is, and that's not the woman she wants to be. She pauses at the top of the stairs, her eyes sweeping the room, her chest rising and falling as she draws in a deep, steadying breath. The chandelier above casts a golden glow, the crystals sparkling like fallen stars, the entire room bathed in an ethereal, haunting light. And then she spots Nora, standing off to the side, hands clasped tightly together, eyes shining with unshed tears. Her expression a mix of awe and pride, and something that makes Mia's heart squeeze so hard she almost forgets how to breathe. Mia's heels click softly against the floor as she crosses the room, her gaze fixed on Nora, her chest tight, her throat thick, her breaths coming in shallow, shaky gasps. "Mia," Nora whispers, her voice breaking, her lower lip trembling as Mia stops in front of her, her hands shaking, her eyes shining. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," Mia says, her voice soft, gentle, warm. "You don't have to say anything." Nora's breath hitches, her tears spilling over, sliding down her cheeks as Mia reaches out, taking her hands, holding them tight, grounding her, anchoring her. "I remember the first day I came here," Mia says, her voice a low, raw murmur, her eyes locked onto Nora's, her throat aching. "I was standing in that kitchen, wearing that maid's uniform, scrubbing the floors, and you were the only one who looked me in the eye. You were the only one who treated me like I mattered." Nora shakes her head, her fingers squeezing Mia's, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "You always mattered," she chokes out, her voice breaking, her chest heaving. "You always did." Mia swallows, her vision blurring, her heart pounding as she leans in, her voice dropping to a whisper, her words a soft, fierce promise. "And now," Mia says, her voice trembling, her eyes shining, "you're going to matter even more." The room watches, eyes wide, mouths open, phones raised, cameras flashing as Mia pulls Nora into a fierce, unbreakable embrace, her arms wrapping around the woman who once wrapped her in warmth when the world was cold and cruel. And as Nora sobs against her shoulder, Mia holds her tight, her heart swelling, her soul soaring, her chest aching as she whispers, "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Because tonight, it's not about power, it's not about money, it's not about vengeance. It's about lifting up the people who believed in you when you had nothing to give but your heart. And tonight, the girl in the cheap dress isn't just a queen, she's the girl who built a castle from the ground up. And now she's opening the gates for everyone who helped her rise." Mia stands at the top of the grand staircase, the mansion sprawling beneath her like a kingdom she built from dust and ashes, her chest heaving, her heart pounding, her eyes blazing with the fire of a woman who has finally taken back what was stolen from her. The guests remain frozen, their eyes locked on her, their breaths held, their faces a sea of guilt and shame, each one of them a part of the cruel chorus that had tried to drown her in humiliation. And now, they are the ones drowning in silence. Mia's gaze sweeps over them, her chin lifted, her spine straight, her dress still stained with champagne, the dark streaks clinging to her like battle scars. But she doesn't wipe it away. She doesn't hide it, because tonight, that stain is her crown. Look around, Mia says, her voice a low, powerful echo that slices through the air like a sword, each word a hammer pounding against the silence. Take a good, long look, because this. She spreads her arms wide, her eyes blazing, her jaw clenched. This is what real power looks like. The crowd shifts uneasily, eyes darting to the floor, shoulders hunching, faces flushing with the sting of her truth. Power isn't in the dress you wear, Mia continues, her voice rising, ringing out like a battle cry. It isn't in the diamonds around your neck or the champagne in your glass. Power is in how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you. Power is in how you act when you think no one's watching. Mia's eyes lock onto Vanessa, who still sits crumpled on the marble floor, her once glistening gown now wrinkled, stained, her shoulders shaking, her eyes hollow and empty. Because what you don't see, Mia says, her voice dropping to a lethal, venomous whisper, her gaze a burning brand. Is that the girl you stepped on? The girl you laughed at? The girl you tried to break? That girl was the one who could take everything away from you in the blink of an eye. Vanessa's lips part, her breath coming in short, jagged gasps, her hands trembling, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. So, the next time you look at someone and think they're beneath you, Mia says, her voice calm, cold, cutting through the air like a whip. Remember tonight. Remember me. Remember the girl in the cheap dress who now owns the mansion you're standing in. The crowd is silent, the air thick, heavy, oppressive, the weight of Mia's words pressing down on them like a crushing, unrelenting force. Mia draws in a deep breath, her chest heaving, her heart pounding, her eyes glistening as she raises her chin higher, her voice carrying through the room like a queen addressing her court. Because power, Mia says, her voice a fierce, unyielding declaration, isn't about what you wear or what you own. It's about who you are. It's about what you survive. It's about how you rise when everyone else is trying to bury you. Mia steps back, her eyes sweeping the room one last time, her lips curving into a slow, dangerous smile. And tonight, she says, her voice dropping to a whisper, her eyes burning, I just rose. The room is silent, the guests staring, stunned, speechless, as Mia turns, her heels clicking against the marble like a final, resounding drumbeat, her head held high, her shoulders back, her heart soaring as she walks away. Outside, the night air is cool against her skin, the city lights glittering like a sea of diamonds, the mansion looming behind her like a castle she just reclaimed. Sometimes, the ones we laugh at are the ones holding all the power. Tonight, one woman's quiet strength and unwavering dignity remind us that true power isn't worn. It's earned. And as the dust settles, those who mocked her now bow their heads in shame, haunted by the girl they tried to break. The girl who just took back her throne. So, the next time you judge someone by their clothes, remember, the real queen doesn't need a crown. Would you have seen it coming?